put these foolish ambitions to rest. Tarnished.
It's time to gather round, Tarnished, to listen to another tale here on Chat TPK, the place for killer conversations and all things geek culture. It's me, Mike, again back with another delicious discussion, and this time it's all about Elden Ring. We're going to be taking a small hiatus from our deep dives on the new changes to D&D, so stay tuned for more content on that in future episodes. If you're not subscribing to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your chosen podcasting platform, be sure to hit that follow button or bell so you never miss out on any of the action that we bring you here on Chat TPK. Be sure to also join us on YouTube for video content, Instagram or Facebook for regular updates, as well as our community Discord to engage in our weekly geeky debates. With my admin all done for the day, let us grab our sword and shield and jump on torrent as we gallop into today's topic, Elden Ring. The good, the bad, and the Erdtree. With the new DLC having been out for a number of weeks, in fact I actually think a month as of recording this date, we thought we would look to share the views of two of our super experienced explorers from the lands between. Now, be prepared to be inspired by a true rune bearer and someone who makes short work of the mightiest of demigods. It's Martyn. Hello, Martyn.
Greetings, Tarnished.
How are you doing? Are you excited about it? I don't know why I'm asking that question because I know how excited you are about this topic. Elden Ring is like your love, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I've been babbling about it for the last 10 minutes while we're waiting to start. Yeah, I became completely obsessed with it first time round, and I suppose this DLC has just kind of rekindled that very much. It's just my type of game, to be fair.
Yeah, for sure. Now, we'll try our best not to make this into a monologue for you, because whilst you are way more experienced in terms of Elden Ring than I am, we also do have another person on board that will be able to give us their insight as well. So join me in summoning to the podcast a legendary figure who brings light to even the darkest of dungeons. It's Rick. Hello, Rick. You sound like the trader from Resident Evil 4.
It's just a very FromSoft laugh, isn't it?
Yeah. No, I liked it. You are on a run of interesting intros at the moment. So welcome, Rick. It's good to have you on board. So in terms of your knowledge of Elden Ring, what would you say in comparison to Martyn? Where would you stand?
If Martyn is Star Scourge Radahn of knowledge of Elden Ring, I am Patches, and I will turn and run from his meteoric might.
If you're on that sort of level, I'm just starting out. I am a wee green Tarnished, having just left the starting area pretty much. But no, because of your recommendations, you two, I have jumped on the bandwagon of Elden Ring. And as the DLC has come out, as I said previously, only a month ago, I think it's a good time just to digest about what the DLC brings to Elden Ring and discuss what Elden Ring actually has to offer new players, because I, for one, was a little bit hesitant about starting it, and there may be others that may also be of that sort of thinking. Hopefully we can dispel that with today's discussion, and we can also just have a little moment in which we can pick your brains about things like your favourite builds, your favourite weapons, trickiest fights, etc. Just a good old chat here on Chat TPK about why people should pick up Elden Ring. So, if you had to describe Elden Ring, both of you, to someone who's never played the game before, never played a FromSoftware game before, and never heard of the Dark Souls series, of which it kind of is linked to somewhat, what would you say Elden Ring is as a game? How would you describe it to them?
I would say a high fantasy game, falling more into the dark fantasy category.
Yep.
On very hard mode.
Extremely hard mode.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
A lot of people are put off because you say it's really hard. It's not as hard as people make it out to be. It's quite forgiving. Like, if there's a hard thing coming up, you will get a checkpoint that you respawn at less than 2 minutes away.
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
It's a game of pattern recognition, I think.
Yes.
more than anything.
Yeah, pattern recognition and just sheer luck sometimes. What I've always said this to other people that I've been playing with. If you've ever played games, like if you like your general RPG fantasy games, especially like your open world stuff, much of this will feel very similar. You know, you've got your open world where you've got then areas where you've maybe got to enter a dungeon where it becomes a little bit more linear. You do things like upgrade skills, upgrade your stats, stuff like that. A lot of that is not unique to this game.
Mm-hmm.
But what is more unique to the FromSoftware titles is the gloves are off. You don't reach that god mode that you'll find that you reach when you level up quite quickly in other games. So if you think Skyrim as an example, you know, that's massively, massively popular. You reach a certain level in Skyrim and you're unstoppable. You know, you are
Yeah.
literally walking around as a god. And while that can be fun, it can also take a lot of the excitement,
Challenge out of it.
challenge out of the game, because you don't need to worry about anything. Oh, look, there's a dragon, and I'm just going to slap it until it dies.
I've got ebony arrows. It's going to come down in 5.
Yeah.
Easy.
And Elden Ring, and especially Shadow of the Erdtree, kind of changes that dynamic massively, because even if you are a ridiculously high level, even really just some of like the spam and mob enemies can kill you in seconds.
So for people that have never played this before, that's not something that should put you off. It might sound a bit scary, even though I've kind of like witnessed in my first 20 hours of playtime now, so not a great deal, but enough to get a taste of things. I would echo what you say that about the patterns. Like, you learn how different enemies move, the different combinations that they have, and it is just about practice. Practice does make progress, which is something I do tell my school children, because no one's perfect, but we can all make progress. And it's not my sort of game that I would normally look to be drawn to. I wasn't big on the Dark Souls games, but having played this, I think now I'm older, I'm a lot more patient, and you need that patience. You need that, you know, when you're young and you play, you know, things like Call of Duty or something quick and action based, you get frustrated quite easily. Martyn, I know you've many a time said you get very, very frustrated and you might F and Jeff about a fight or something. But but generally speaking, though, you need to have some level of patience, and I think this game really rewards that.
I tell myself off playing Elden Ring more than I get cross at the enemies.
Yeah.
What are you doing? It was dodge left.
Well, yeah. I always do that. I always go, that was greedy. That was silly. You're a silly boy. Next time, do better. And then I largely don't do any better. And I have to tell myself off again. But
you're a very naughty boy, Rick.
But it is the sort of thing that will tell you who you are as a person more than a lot of games. Like a game where you point and click and people die and you feel super powerful. They're great if you don't want to use your brain.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, from the opposite end, Elden Ring's great because you have to think about every enemy you fight and you have to learn their patterns. And there does come a point at which you go back to the first enemies you were fighting, say the very first group of knights that you fight, and you go, oh, these guys were easy. What was I even worried about? They telegraph their attacks 3 seconds in advance. But when you first fight them, they're really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they hit and they slap. They really slap. Like, even like the undead, which is slow, they get their spear on you, and that's like half your health gone. And it's just like, okay, actually, you know, they don't look very imposing, but they hit hard. So I'm going to give them a bit of a wider berth in future. So yeah, I have found I've had to be a lot more resilient playing this game, which you know, in other games that I've played, a lot more casual, a lot more passive. I can pick up and play, and actually, there's not much risk. But this one, if you die and you lose your 10,000 runes, and it's in a really annoying place to get to, there's nothing worse. I did lose about 10,000 the other day by
Look
falling.
at him with such pity.
It wasn't pity.
You looked at him like 10,000 pockets.
It was.
I know it's nothing to you.
He wouldn't even pick that
envy. It was envy. So I'm playing through the DLC on my original character that I've ran through the base game 9 times now. I think 9 times. I'm on NG+9. on the main game.
Wow.
And nearly finished the DLC, but I am level 300 and ish. It's 320, 330, I think, maybe a bit higher. I can't remember. But it costs me 1.5 million runes to level up.
Wow. We should just say runes are like the currency, essentially, because you
Like
can use them
XP.
to buy stuff.
Yeah.
It's like XP, yeah. It's
XP
XP.
and currency. Yeah.
Yeah, all in one. So you can buy things from traders, you can upgrade gear with it, and you can level up as well. So it's quite a useful multi-use currency within the game. It is quite forgiving in that if you do die, it does present the opportunity to go back and find your dead body and reclaim it. But yeah, it depends where you died, because that could be a really horrible place.
This is like we've been talking. It's that determination, because one of the absolute worst things that you can do is lose those in a place where getting them back is extremely treacherous. But it's being able to go with a plan rather than just running in Leroy Jenkins and it's like, right, I'm going to go here, I'm going to get this before I start taking any aggro.
I have to know that this guy chases me, this guy can hit me from over there, so I have to stick close to the wall. Things like that make it quite, you've got to think about it quite tactically. I think I often make the mistake of playing it right before bed and then put it down at bedtime.
So I lost those 10,000.
And then when I go to bed, I'm like, takes me a good 30, 40 minutes to actually start to go to sleep.
Thinking about what you're going to do when you go back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair play. So if someone hasn't brought the base game, but they were looking to do so, it is currently on sale in multiple places. I know it's on sale on the Steam sale, I think, also on the Xbox Ultimate Game sale. So it's on the cheap, so be sure to pick it up if you are interested by our conversations. Any tips for brand new players if they were to pick it up tomorrow and they were jumping right out the gate? What would you urge them to do from the off? Any tips for them?
I would say explore the first area as much as possible and leave the man on the horse alone. or don't.
I killed him.
That's a great tip. When you first come out into that area and you're like, I've made it through my little tutorial area, everyone's like, oh, look at that guy. I'm going to go and get him. Don't. Leave him alone.
Is that the tree sentinel?
The tree sentinel, yeah.
Yeah, I killed him at last. He took a while. Once you get Torrent, it's not too bad, actually, is it? So
it's fighting on your horse is a bit different than fighting in real life, and I suppose this will be some of the tips that I can espouse during this section. But I wouldn't recommend fighting him on Torrent. There's very few enemies that I would recommend actually fighting on Torrent.
Dragons, yes, fight them on your horse.
Dragons, yes, to a degree. Their mobility absolutely helps, makes a real difference, but you're not going to do as much damage to that dragon while you're on your horse as if you were on foot. So there's times to get off your horse and back on. The main reason why I don't recommend using Torrent during fights, and as soon as you get Torrent quite early, so this is relevant for new players. When you're on foot, when you dodge or jump, you get a certain amount of iframes. So that's times where you can't be hit or damaged. It's a fraction of a second when you dodge. It does.
Yeah.
So when you dodge, it's a fraction of a second. When you jump, it's about a second, but for only the bottom half of your body. When you're on Torrent, you get no iframes.
Oh.
So
even when you press B and just
even when you press B, because that's just making him sprint a little bit.
Yeah.
It's not affecting your iframes. And also, if Torrent dies, you have to use one of your health flasks called Crimson Tear flasks in order to resummon Torrent, which if you're in the middle of a boss fight, you've probably got better uses for that Crimson Tear flask as well.
That's caught. I know that's caught a lot of people out a lot of times because it comes up with a little menu that says, would you like to use one of your flasks to resurrect Torrent? And you have to switch it to yes and then press A. In that time, first time it comes up, you're dead 3 times.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
You go, what's this? I'm just trying to get on my horse, and then someone hits you with a humongous hammer and you die.
So my tip of using Torrent is a terrible tip.
Well,
it's not bad.
It's not terrible.
It's not bad.
They've served me well in some areas. Quite.
It can be really, really useful when you're fighting on torrent in certain circumstances. Maybe not for a boss. You may have found them so far. There's areas where they're kind of like dragging caravans, and you want to get the caravan that's in them and stuff like that. Because what you can do before you get on torrent, if you make sure that you're double handing your weapon, when you get on torrent, even though you're only holding it with one hand, it does double-handed damage.
Oh, didn't know that.
Because you can literally just run through mobs with your sword out and then melt them.
That's awesome.
But it's not very obvious how to double-hand a weapon either as a beginner tip.
Yeah. Is it like if it's PlayStation or it's like Y or triangle and then
the shoulder
R1,
button?
or
The shoulder
buttons.
whichever weapon you want to swap
into. That took me a little while to figure out, to be fair.
And it doesn't tell you. So,
no, it doesn't. No.
This is, for anyone listening, this is one of the things about FromSoft games in general. They tell you nothing, so you don't get
learning curve.
You don't get the map to begin with. You've got to find things to unlock the map. It doesn't tell you which way to go. It doesn't tell you what your quest is. There's no quest markers. There is a very minimal tutorial, very, very minimal, that doesn't cover even half of the mechanics. You've kind of just got to figure it out.
The Cave of Knowledge taught me a few things.
Yeah, but it teaches the important things, doesn't it? Block, dodge, and attack. Those are the important ones. But torrent's fantastic for exploring. So, like Rick said before, top tip: just explore, do your side dungeons, run around with torrent. They hide things in crazy places, despite it having a weird and janky mechanic for getting around. Like. There is as much platforming in this as you generally find in like one of the 3D Mario games.
Or a Tomb Raider or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fair play. And torrent has double jump, which I only learned a few days ago.
Yes, very, very useful.
Yeah, for sure. Nice. Any other tips other than using torrents wisely?
When you find a new weapon, either go back to the last safe place that you were looking for before you start using it, so that you can check out its moveset, because not all weapons suit all play styles. So different types of weapons, for example, a greatsword swing very, very slowly but hit very hard, compared to a short sword which swings faster but doesn't hit as hard, and they've all got slightly different movesets. Find the one that works for you. While we will be talking later about certain items and weapons that are fantastic and generally like the best iterances of their weapon type, having a weapon that works for your play style is generally more important than having the most powerful weapon.
Yeah.
And I would say mobility is key. Like Mr. Miyagi would say, the best way to avoid a hit is not to be there. You don't have to roll away from everything. There are things you can just walk out of the way of, or go around the back of the boss.
Or just
you don't
press
have
B
to roll
or
everywhere.
circle and just move back. That
reminds me of actually of a really good tip. So dodging, you'll do it a lot. You'll be flipping and rolling all around the map when you're fighting things. If something's going to hit you when you're stood still, if something's going to hit you around about your belly button or lower, it's better to jump than to dodge, because you get the iframes last longer and it doesn't put you out of position quite as much, and it uses less stamina.
And you can attack out of a jump.
And you can attack out of a jump.
Yeah, you can do a jump attack, can't you?
So jumping in the right circumstances is better than dodging. Jumping in the wrong circumstances is death.
However, you will forget this tip completely the first time you're like, shit, that's going to hit me. And you will spam B like your life depends on it.
Yeah, you've got to, like you said earlier, Rick, you've got to have that pattern recognition. You've got to know, right, this is going to be a ground sweep or an explosion on the floor or something like that. I can jump now. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, if you're listening to this and you have played Elden Ring, and these tips are not necessarily ones that you need to hear because you've played it quite a lot, then be sure to give us your ideas in the comments, and we'll be sure to publish and share them to others. So, yeah. Feel free to interact with us. I think Spotify has a new comment feature, and obviously you can also find us on our social medias and our Discord. Just come shove it on Discord, and you can have Martyn and Rick pick apart your ideas.
My next tip, although I think we were moving past tips, but I'm going to add one anyway.
There's so many.
Do what I want.
Do you, Rick?
talk to NPCs several times, then rest and talk to them again. Because until they say the same thing over and over, because you can miss vast swathes of storyline by accidentally going, all right, he said, thank you for avenging my son or whatever. And I assume that's the end of the conversation, so I'm going to leave. But I forgot to talk to him one more time where he says, and now I'm going to kill you. And you miss out on his mega great sword or whatever. That isn't an actual example from the game. I just made that up. But there are similar situations.
Yeah.
I think the last bloke I spoke to, I think it was like in the 4th or 5th layer of dialogue, essentially. And he was like, oh, yeah, by the way, my castle's been taken over. Can you go back and like liberate it? Like the previous stuff never mentioned anything about that. And it's like, oh, okay, all right, I'll get on that.
White Mask Vare, however you pronounce that, is a really good example of that, as are D in the roundtable hold. If you don't talk to them multiple times, you miss quests.
Yeah.
And the same with Fia, the lady in the roundtable hold who wants to give you a hug. The same with her. Ooh, there's a tip for you that's just reminded me. Hug her.
Hug her.
Okay. Use the blessing that she gives you immediately and let it wear off. Overall, it is a net negative. You get some benefits from it, but the negative that you get, the reduction of HP, is not worth it. So just having it in your inventory is detrimental. So as soon as you get it, use it, let it time out, and then crack on. But do hug her. Yeah.
Now, getting the conversations from the NPCs completed, as you say, gives you some of these quests. What sort of things do you get at the end of these quests? Is it quite typical loot in terms of like weapon, armor, talismans? Are they the usual things you would look to get from completing them?
Yes and no. So you get some stuff, you get some spells, you get like different summons that you can do from various quests. One that I'm thinking of gives you a way into the capital, in which you don't have to fight 3 separate bosses in a row. You just go in via a secret portal, which is really good. You can skip about 2 hours of frustrations if you're like me and aren't very good at games.
Yeah, so it varies. Some will give you an armor set and a weapon. Some will just give you a talisman. Some does nothing except affect something else somewhere else in the game.
Okay.
So it depends. What I generally say, when you get deep enough into it to really care about that kind of stuff, there's a whole host of like wikis and stuff like that just to check out like what choice and what conversation is going to make certain things happen. Because if you're one of those people who's looking for like your platinum trophies and stuff on PlayStation to get 100% on this, you're going to have to run through the game multiple times and make different choices so that you can get all the different endings and stuff like that. So you will get quite deep into that kind of stuff, but take it quite organically. Talk who you want to talk to, do what you want to do. You're going to have a great time anyway.
Yeah, just explore and the first time round, just do anything that you want to do the way you want to do it. That's basically how I'm approaching it, and I imagine in my second run through, if I ever beat the game, I will be probably wiki led, as you say. So going from the tips on to, what would you say are the trickiest parts of the game? Like, is it a boss? Is it a certain part of a level where there's just an insane amount of parkouring required? I imagine it's probably a boss, to be fair. But yeah, what are the trickiest parts of the games?
The Lake of Rot.
Yeah.
Have I been there yet? I don't think I've been there yet.
Over in Caelid. It is quite tricky because you've got several rot knights and things like that knocking around as well when the floor hurts you. So having a fight.
I wouldn't say that's so much tricky. Is just if you don't have the right stuff. Like there's a spell and there's boluses that you eat. I don't know what you do with them. They might be suppositories.
Nice, that stuff.
But yeah, if you don't come prepared with those, you're going to die a lot. And you're going to die frustratingly because with Scarlet Rot, it just ticks down your health. And so you go, oh no, I'm out of flasks. I'm going to die. I can see the sight of grace and then you die. And that's frustrating. I wouldn't say it's so much tricky though, just punishing, isn't it?
Yeah. There's an area in the DLC which is like that, but for madness.
Ooh.
And so it's not as much as like everywhere you walk makes you mad, but even being in relatively close proximity to a sheep will start your madness build up. And you can't use torrent there either, at all in that area. For lore reasons as well, actually. But like that area for me has been quite difficult because there's also enemies that you cannot hurt unless you parry them. So you really have to get good.
Yeah.
Or they'll do you, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Parrying is possibly a mechanic that you've never used in the game as well. If you've gone through with a greatsword or with spells, suddenly you're like, oh god.
Yeah, and the timing has to be very precise.
With is it like the left trigger with some shields or
yeah,
yeah, and it has to be perfectly timed. Because I don't think I've managed.
Your
to
parry
do
window is
so far.
very narrow.
Yeah, that's risky.
Yeah.
But then obviously, if those enemies can't be hurt by any of the means, then you're going to have to get good, aren't you? So.
Yeah, the place that I think is... Sorry, Rick, go on.
Thanks. I was going to say, I think different areas are trickier depending on your build, and especially bosses are trickier depending on your build. Because the first time I went through, I went, right, I'm going to be sword and shield boy, and then later on I spec'd into faith for some spells and stuff. But I found the first boss really hard, and then the second boss in the castle, Godric the Grafted, really easy.
Did it first time. I don't know how, but wasn't too bad, was he? Quite easy moves to...
Because if you stay away from him, like I saw the second time around, the first boss, really easy, because he's slow and cumbersome and has all that delay on his attacks. You can run away from him. I went through the second time with an archer build, which are both harder and easier than you would think. But shot him down, easy peasy. Second boss kept doing his roly-polies over to me and smacking me in the head, and I kept dying. Different bosses, depending on where you want to be on the map, can be very, very difficult.
So from my small amount of time playing it so far, again, I think I'm rocking around about 20 plus hours. I think we mentioned it just before we start recording, but is it Stormvale Castle? We mentioned how you're presented with the opportunity to go through the front gate, and then the ballistas will F you up, or go through the side, which takes you around the back of it, and that is an experience in itself. I think we said that it lets you encounter lots of different things, lots of different mechanics, lots of different enemy types, and that actually is a really big learning experience. I've managed to get better at the game just by doing that. So that's probably, again, we've already done tips, but that's probably my tip so far. It was a tricky area, wasn't easy. There are some quite brutal enemies at low level play there. Definitely a place I think you should look to visit rather than go through. If you were to go through the front entrance, is it literally just running and because you can't really block because you're going to run out of stamina super quick from those ballista?
Well, yeah, positioning makes a difference. If you stand somewhere where the ballista can't hit you, it gives it a much easier position for you to start fighting all the other stuff that's around. What you could do is just run and then go up and left, take out the ballista, and then fight everything on the way back down. But generally, if you're just up for a little bit of running, really, and you think that you can get through there, straight through, keep heading straight forward, you'll get your next portcullis. Pretty much once you're through there, everything behind you is going to just give up and not care, and you can keep going and very quickly turn a corner, and then you're in the next area with a whole new set of problems.
Yeah, for that bit, I would say listening is your friend as well, because the ballista go ka-chonk, and then about 3 seconds later, a bolt hits you and explodes. So when you hear the ka-chonk, either zigzag to the side or dodge.
That's another pattern.
It's not 3 seconds. Actually, it's way sooner than that. But once you're listening out for it, you'll be like, oh, ka-chonk, better dodge.
That's a really good. So
you don't have to see something to know. It does give you some audio cues as well, which is good.
Yeah, there are quite a few audio cues through the game if you're playing on headphones. Like when you hit someone's shield and they're going to counterattack you, it goes ka-shing. and then they go to hit you, and that's when you need to get out of the way.
Dodge,
Yeah, there are a few that if you're listening, instead of screaming and running, you will hide them.
Yeah, you get a similar
Fantastic.
sound when you do a guard counter. If you're not parrying, but you get a guard counter against an enemy with you blocking with your shield, there's a similar sound. There's a bit of a note to you that you've just done a good thing. But yeah, they
Well
can do
done.
it to you too.
Okay, moving on. Are there any weapons which you've used so far that you would actually recommend people maybe looking up on a wiki and trying to get? Obviously, it is quite build dependent, but are there some which you could probably use for a few different ones, for instance?
I think from my perspective, it very much depends on your play style because,
Yeah.
like I was saying before, if the weapon works for you, it will work. Kind of like full stop. But that said, there are better ones than others. So, like if you're using great swords, you'll be fine with any great sword, but some are better than others. Katanas wise, there's one that you can get relatively early one called the Nagakiba, which is worth getting. It's a little bit longer than other katanas, so that's quite good because you can just increase that range a little bit, which is handy. You don't have to get in quite as close. It's also, you can change the weapon art on it, so you can change what ability it has and what class, what type of damage that it helps do. So whether it helps you induce hemorrhage, like bleed build-up, or it can do frost damage or fire damage, stuff like that on top of its normal slashing. So that's good because of its versatility. But then you've got the Rivers of Blood katana is probably the one that everybody talks about. It was the way to beat the game when it first came out, and many people, myself included, still use it regularly.
Can you dual wield them?
You can.
Is that possible? Yeah.
You can. There isn't a massive benefit to dual wielding. The only real benefit that it gives you is that when you are dual wielding, it's called power stancing in FromSoft games. When you're dual wielding two weapons that allow you to power stance, instead of your left trigger being block and holding the weapon in front of you to block, it gives you a special attack that basically just attacks with both of the weapons.
So it's a very aggressive playstyle.
Yeah, but generally, you will get a better damage output from just double handing one of the weapons. So I generally do dual wield, but the reason that I do that is so that I can double hand either my left or my right, depending on the circumstance. Because I'll have something like a weapon art called Bloodhound Step, which gives you a really quick dodge off to one side where you get some pretty good iframes on my left-hand weapon.
From a weapon you can get quite early on, which is very good as a curved sword that lasted me through 3/4 of the game first time.
It's fantastic, Bloodhound Step. There's a easier, as I say, a lesser version called Quick Step, but Bloodhound Step is absolutely fantastic. But yeah, if you do it like that, you can use the weapon art on either weapon situationally, rather than have to go into your inventory, change things about, stuff like that. There are a couple, though, that are absolutely worth getting, purely because of their use at certain other points in the game. There's a halberd that inflicts sleep, so it's a condition. If you hit something enough, it'll fall asleep. And near the end of the game, there is probably one of the most frustrating boss fights called the Godskin Duo. You basically have to fight two of these Godskin apostles. One's a big skinny guy and one's a big chonker. And they've got completely different moves and they are annoying as sin.
Yeah.
Putting them to sleep makes that much, much easier. It's probably the best way to do that boss.
So sleep works on pretty much everyone then, does it?
Not everything, but a lot of things.
A lot of stuff puts it to sleep until you hit it again.
Okay.
Which is great if you're facing two bosses, because then you can focus one down.
Nice. Awesome.
There's also one that I'll probably talk about regularly, or anyone who talks to me, called the Blasphemous Blade, that you can get maybe about halfway through the game, which is just top tier. It's absolutely top tier, again, predominantly because of its weapon art, but it does good base damage just as a weapon. It's a great sword that does its normal great sword physical damage and some fire damage, but its weapon art does fire damage and will heal you for a percentage of the damage that you deal, which health is of a premium
That's what I used to the end of the first run of the game, which is why I stepped more into Faith, so the weapon art do more damage. And it is just good. Like, your weapon art's quite aggressive, but also heals you. It goes quite far. For a sword and board build, would recommend that and a great shield.
It reminds me of Cravenage from Vox Machina, because that like absorbs the blood
This is
from your
not
enemies.
a D&D podcast.
I know it's not. I know. But there's some similarities, though, right? No, okay. I'll go back in my box. But yeah, any things other than weapons? Are there any particular items that you could look to try and include in your build to try and make things a bit easier for yourself?
There are some talismans that are quite good depending on your build. There's one early on called the Raw Medallion, which, if you're going for a Dragon Shout build, is very good. Just boosts the power of it.
Yeah,
there are a couple that, when you critically hit someone, so if you're going for a parry build or if you're going round people's backs, can restore your health or your FP focus points, which, as Martyn said before, are at a premium. Anything that can restore you passively is really good.
Yeah, there's tons of really, really good talismans, and more than anything, it's the talismans that will take a build from good to great. But it can also make it the difference between not surviving and surviving for any other build. So there's loads of different talismans that are based purely around defense, and they can be elemental defense, fire, lightning, things like that, pure physical defense, magical defense, and they scale. So they have like the base ones, then there's a +1, a +2, a +3. Obviously, the +3 being the best. They are, honest to goodness, the difference between dying and not dying on so many different occasions.
Yeah, worth also noting that you can switch out your talismans if you're in a place with a lot of lightning or fire or bits of meteor raining from the sky.
What's the maximum amount?
So you can have, one sec, I need to count mine.
I've got 2 currently equipped.
I'm going to run through the ones that I use at the moment. So Lord of Blood's Exaltation, which increases your damage when there is blood loss in the vicinity. There is the Rotten Winged Insignia, which greatly increases your attack power on successive attacks. So that's great if you're hitting things quickly. There is Millicent's Prosthetic, which increases your dexterity and boosts your attack power for successive attacks. And I'm also using the Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, so 4.
Okay, so 4 in total.
But you have to beat bosses to unlock talisman pouches. You start off with the ability to equip one, I think.
One,
then you get your first talisman pouch after beating Margit. Then you get another one at beating Renala. And then another one somewhere, I can't remember.
As you say, probably bring your build to kind of the next level. Like, having that second talisman is really helping me a lot. So you've given me one, and that's allowed me to utilise it much better. I'm finding the beginning area is a bit easier now due to that. Obviously, there are lots of things that we could go on further to talk about. Could you just give us some information as to what, Martyn, the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC does in terms of changing the base game? Does it change the base game at all, or is it literally just new areas? What does it bring? Because both Rick and I haven't bought it yet. Could you persuade us to buy it?
I bought it as we started this podcast.
Nice.
Fair play.
Nice.
Fair play. Good.
So it is related story-wise to the main game, but nothing that you do in the main game will have an impact on the DLC area and vice versa. So it is in and of itself isolated. You are you're in a different world for it. You're in the Shadow Realm, or whatever they want to call it. It's
Yugi's been here.
You
use a card game to Yugi, and he sends you to the Shadow Realm.
So Shadow is called the Shadowlands. So it's technically different. It's FromSoftware do a thing with all of their DLCs, I think bar one, where to get to it, buying it isn't enough. You're going to have to play the base game for a bit to even get there. So you have to beat a boss that for many people will be kind of mid to end game kind of area. And the boss isn't that tough, but the area is quite tricky, and getting there is quite convoluted. So they recommend that you're approximately level 130, level 150 before you go into the DLC. And as a point of reference, that is the same level that they would generally expect you to be to have completed the base game.
How many hours of gameplay are you talking there? Is that
It
hundreds?
depends on how you play, to be completely honest.
Fair. Okay.
It can be anywhere. I think it's been speed runned in like an hour or less, or something.
Wow.
The base
On a
game.
dance mat.
Yeah, people have done crazy things with it. But when you do eventually get into the DLC, what you can expect is basically more of the base game, which is fantastic art. Like everything about the Shadow of the Erdtree just kind of mirrors the amazing visuals that you'll see across the base game, but more of a challenge. There's an entirely new mechanic introduced for the DLC just to scale your character's power up to survive. So it's become less and less about just grinding levels as it is finding things called, it's spelt Erdtree fragments, but it's pronounced Shadow Tree fragments.
Okay.
That after collecting a certain amount, you can upgrade and upgrade your Shadow Tree blessing. And what that does is it increases your attack, defense, like resistance to debuffs and stuff like that, by approximately 5%. So it starts off pretty low. So like you've got one of these blessings, you're not really going to notice it.
Yeah.
But you can get a maximum of 20 of these blessings. So by the time you've got kind of 10 upwards, you'll massively notice the difference between the damage you're taking, the damage you're outputting, and the survivability. Without those, the DLC would be nigh on impossible unless you had an overabundance of get good. But yeah, some more great level design. They've changed the dungeons. One of the things that has been relatively monotonous in the base game is that a lot of the dungeons, a lot of the catacombs and caves felt pretty much the same. They were very linear. You know, you could kind of figure out the paths because you're like,
copy paste job.
I've been here before. When you haven't, they've changed that up in Shadow of the Erdtree, and they feel just a lot more engaging. Things are different. So like I ran through a dungeon the other day where the end of it wasn't a boss. The end of it was here's an item, and it was just a very convoluted way to get round. It was inside a forge. It was cool. It was very good. So they've just tweaked that up a little bit so that it wasn't a complete copy, if that makes sense.
Too samey.
Expanded it, and it's just more of the same. There wouldn't have been much call for a continuance of it, but they've changed so many little things that it almost feels like a new experience while still having that comfort of something that you're familiar with and already liked.
That sounds like what a DLC should be.
So it's a DL they them.
Yeah. But no, that sounds like very compelling, persuasive points you make there. Rick, you've just bought it. Does that whet your appetite?
Well, my appetite was already whet, and I was just waiting because I was a pauper for payday to come around. But
most of us are.
It happened on Friday, so I've bought the game as my payday treat to me.
Nice.
I always buy a payday treat for myself, a payday treat for my girlfriend, and a payday treat for the house. And I'll show you what my payday treat for the house was, because, I mean, a lot of people don't care, but I bought this.
Is that a frog?
I bought this blur in a frame.
I bought this blur, yes. Look at him go.
Why?
He's just a grumpy frog. I saw it and I thought, it's great. I love grumpy frogs. You can live in the bathroom and watch people poop.
That looks like the kind of thing that you could look around and just look at it, and it will just give you that little bit of happiness. I feel like that's a good purchase. Yeah.
Exactly.
To be fair, I've got 3 bathrooms, and in each of my bathroom, I've got a big picture of like a goose, but like different art style of geese. Yeah, maybe actually having a toad isn't that odd.
Life imitating art. Jory's afraid of geese.
Yeah,
but you're the opposite.
Weird, right?
You
Wait,
love
who's jury? That sounds like D&D talk, Rick. Banishment. Fair play. Right. Just to round off this episode, because we've had a good chat about Elden Ring so far. For people who, I know I don't want to stem the tide of your discussion, Martyn, because you could go on. I could probably literally just walk off and come back in 2 hours, and you'd be still cracking on, wouldn't you? But just to try and keep our episode length similar to that of what we've been releasing so far, if people enjoy Elden Ring, what other games do you think they'd enjoy playing?
Any other FromSoft title.
So Dark Souls, Sekiro, is that one?
Sekiro, a bit different Sekiro. Equally punishing, but the mechanics are more focused on sword fighting and parrying. If you played Sekiro, you will have a great time in Elden Ring, because you've already got fantastic parry timing, and good parry timing can trivialize so much of Elden Ring. But yeah, Bloodborne, Dark Souls 2, most of the FromSoft games. The Lies of P, which is relatively new.
That's what I was going to say.
It's a really good game. You play as Pinocchio in a kind of post-apocalyptic kind of world. The apocalypse was like the uprise of the robots. But great game, again, equally punishing, similar mechanics, play style to that. But there's also one that seems a little bit more light-hearted that a friend of ours called Hannah was talking about the other day. It's called Another Crab's Treasure. It's really bright, really cartoony. Play a crab. But the mechanics of it, the feel of it, and frankly the challenge as well is very FromSofty.
I've heard it is really hard. Yeah,
it's a good game. It's a good game.
Is that PC or is that on console?
I think possibly both, because it's definitely on console, and I'm not a PC gamer myself.
It's on Steam.
I was going to say I would expect it to be. Most things that end up on are on console end up on Steam.
It's currently £21.59 if you want to buy it.
That's a good splash in the ocean. No, that was a terrible joke. Wasn't even really a joke, to be honest.
To add a non... Because those are all very Elden Ring. Very Dark Soulsy. Shadow of Mordor follows a similar vein, where you fight quite tough enemies. Exploration-y.
RPG elements in it as well.
Yeah. God of War as well.
God of War.
PlayStation game.
How about this one, Rick? Ninja Gaiden.
No, that's a very different game.
Oh, okay.
Get out.
Very different game.
Is that more hack and slash? Is that the timing element?
It is a stealth game by nature.
Is it more of a stealth game?
If you're walking around fighting people, especially in Ninja Gaiden 1 and 2, you're playing Ninja Gaiden wrong.
That's why I found it so hard then.
Ninja.
Oh, of course, it's in the title.
Great game though, fantastic.
Mike doesn't speak Japanese.
Devil May Cry, maybe.
It's definitely a beat 'em up. I'd say Devil May Cry is closer to Bayonetta than it is to Elden Ring.
Okay.
Very different types of games.
I think if you like video games, you've probably heard of those already.
Yeah.
The Witcher 3, similar, great big world exploration. I mean, obviously, The Witcher 3 is 10 years old now.
Still
combat's challenging.
It is, yeah, especially if you run right up to someone with a skull on their health bar and go, I could probably take him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it has a similar kind of thing where it's like the right weapon for the right situation, the right potion for the right situation. Yeah, there's definitely aspects of it in the fantastic game as well. Fantastic.
Really, really good game.
Lords of the Fallen is another one. That's a very difficult game, Lords of the Fallen. Some of the the Star Wars Jedi with Cal Kestis.
Oh yeah, I really enjoy Jedi Fallen Order.
They have kind of soulsy feelings with a different type of exploration in them, but I'd say that their combat especially is quite soulsy at times.
Yeah, regenerating enemies and areas when you leave them, come back. The actual combat, it's quite challenging for sure.
And there was one that came out, I think it was earlier this year. The art style's quite different, beautiful art style, but again, very soulsy in terms of the combat. It's called Wolong Fallen Dynasty. That's a great game, very difficult, but great game.
Awesome. That sound like some good recommendations that you've both offered.
Did you mention Ghost of Tsushima as well?
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
That's such a good game. There's a new one coming.
I've not played it.
Oh, it's
It's
amazing.
still £50 on Steam, which is quite a lot of money.
It is for a PC game, yeah, for sure.
I've played a lot of video games, as you may be able to tell. Ghost of Tsushima is in my top 5, and
Wow.
will probably always be in my top 5.
Really interesting.
It was a beautiful game, mechanically executed really, really well. But it also had a really engaging and gripping story, and things happen. There's a point in there that I won't tell you, but there's a point in it, and I cried, and I was like, "This is not happening. This cannot be happening right now. Don't do this." And then it happened, and I cried, and I had to turn the game off for a little bit because you became so emotionally invested.
Yeah.
And then
Wow.
there's just certain things that they do that are absolutely beautiful. So there's certain puzzle aspects in it where you've got to follow basically a fox spirit. It's obviously very heavily ensconced in the Far Eastern kind of like spiritualism and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got to follow like fox spirits to hidden springs to help level up certain skills and abilities. And the way that they've done that, rather than just any other type of puzzle or, follow this glowing line, was done wonderfully. And that, instead of a glowing line, if you ever get lost in Ghost of Tsushima and you don't know where you're going, the wind blows in the direction of your next quest
cool.
point.
that's
Just
pretty
look at the
good.
grass and the bushes and stuff.
So yeah, you just follow the
Yeah.
wind. Honestly, beautifully executed
pretty
game.
cool.
Highly,
Nice
highly
mechanic.
recommend.
Awesome. Fantastic. So, yeah, if you do like Elden Ring, be sure to try and check out those games, just not Ninja Gaiden, because that's definitely not comparable in any way, shape, or form. And I've been playing it wrong for many years. But no, it's been wonderful having you.
Really
both
smacked you
join
down
us.
for that.
I
didn't
was.
you?
I was like, how dare you?
You
It
scumbag.
isn't the first time I've been smacked down. It isn't the first time. And to be honest, I need it sometimes. Sometimes I get a bit big for my boots. So I welcome it. If you have any ideas at home that you'd like to share with the rest of the community, be sure to put it in the comments and we can publish your ideas, and also come to us on Discord and share it there as well. We're a very welcoming bunch. We've had a few people join recently. So yeah, be sure to come and be one of those lucky people to chat to us on there. But it's been a wonderful little conversation discussing Elden Ring. I'm actually just wanting to go and play it right now. So thanks for the chat. I'm going to go play. And I'll be seeing you both on another episode soon. Probably D&D related. So Rick, we can start talking about D&D again soon.
Can't help ourselves, can we?
We cannot help ourselves. It is our bag. It is the stuff that we do like to dip our toe into a lot. We have got a few more classes to go through. There are other elements of D&D that have been changed by the new rule books that we can discuss as well. So stay tuned for that. And I think we have got some more video game content coming out in the upcoming weeks. So yeah, as I say, be sure to look out for them as well. It's been wonderful having you this week here on Chat TPK. Thank you very much, Martyn. I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you.
And Rick, as always, it has been a pleasure.
Put your foolish ambitions to rest.
Thank you, Tarnished.
I was gonna say
You stole my line. You stole my cloud song.
I was like, when's the right point? Am I that cheesy? No.
I am.
It's so good.
Alas, I am cheesy enough to say, have a healthy... Oh, fuck!
Just end it there.
Yeah. Fuck it. Bye, all.
Bye.